Hello and welcome to The Habit Architect. I'm Michael Cups. It's great to be here on a Thursday morning. I just want to remind you that Time Bandit is a sponsor of the podcast, and I really want you to go out and take a look at Habit B, which is an AI companion that you can find on timebandit.io. And we're going to talk a little bit about those AI companions in just a little bit with our guest, Jennifer. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. I love this. This is so much
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, it is. And it's such an important topic that we're going to cover today. And just by doing research about you and how you're helping people, I learned stuff that I didn't even know existed and that this problem exists at the magnitude that it is. And I'll just start with a stat. I mean, I saw somewhere that it's 33% of leave the workforce when,
Mhm.
they're in menopause. And that to me, I was thinking they're at the height of their career. They're making big impact, whether they're in big organizations, small business, education, maybe they're teachers. I mean, that they're at the height of their career and we're losing 33% of them. That is astounding. But before we get there, I know that that's kind of a big drop there, but before we get there, why don't you tell our group about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me and highlighting this topic. I'm extremely passionate about it for lots of reasons, which we'll get into. But I'm Dr. Jennifer Churchill. I am a management psychologist by training, clinical psychology, but I moved into management psychology early in my career, and an executive coach going on 20 years. And typically, I've worked with leaders at the C, like VP to the C-suite level, and all around all things leadership development. I mean, it's really customized the approach I've always taken. And the reason I would say that I found myself in this career is twofold. One is I'm a middle child. I don't need to go into all of the depth of my psychology and therapy I went through to kind of work my way through that. No, I had a great family. It's just I was always super curious and observant
Yeah.
of everyone around me, and so I was naturally like observing people, but like as soon as could really understand human behavior and dynamics when I was young. And so I knew I wanted to work with people, help people in some way. I didn't know how, but I knew I wanted to do it with my own business. So, wrote my first business plan in sixth grade and knew I was
Oh,
just
wow.
going to like whatever. I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe I'd be like either a rock star or a fashion designer. Neither of those worked out. And so now I'm where I'm at. But I also was a swimmer my entire life.
Yeah.
My dad,
An
who,
All-American swimmer, right?
yes,
All-American in
I
college.
was.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and it was formative, and I'm so glad I had the experience that, that I had parents dedicated to keeping us in the sport and getting us there and supporting our experience. But the reason I mention that is because it has been a thread through every single transformation of my own life, but also how I've integrated it into my work with clients around the whole health, whole human approach to leadership. And so in the recent decades and several years, that has become more integrated in a lot of coaching programs, but I've always had it as a major thread. So because if we're not healthy, we can't show up healthy for our teams. And ultimately then we're not taking care of ourselves either. And mental health was really always something that was I was curious about, which led me to become the psychologist first.
Yeah.
And then I discovered this world of management psychology where I could do very similar work, but work with more people in an environment where we spend most of our time at work.
Yeah.
And if I can have some really great interventions and transformations there, then maybe these leaders will create healthier, happier organizations, and then go home to create happier, healthier homes where children can hopefully be raised as happier, healthier individuals as well, that they don't have to recover from their childhood. So
That's
there's that whole system. That's my why. And so I've been doing that level of work for 20 years. But most recently, I think, which is relevant to the show, I've really narrowed in on working with executive women navigating perimenopause into menopause in their professional journey. And so the reason I entered that, like really became aware of it, was I was going through that journey myself,
yeah.
and had an unbelievable transformation in terms of just insight, awareness, connection to my next level purpose, understanding how in midlife we have this like amazing opportunity to like rise to a whole nother level. But
Right.
with her, and men go through andropause, I'm not,
Mhm.
men go through a somewhat of a similar experience as well. But in terms of like the rise and fall of all the three hormones for women, it's so drastic and
Yeah.
volatile that our behavior, our awareness becomes a little bit less predictable. So when you
Yeah.
imagine working in a leadership position, which is high visibility, when these things happen, we either affect our performance or we remove ourselves from the position because we don't know what to do. We blame ourselves, and then we think there's something wrong with us. And then
Yeah.
it could be further from the truth in terms of how it could be an accelerator for your career versus a decelerator.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into that. I wanted to comment on the swimming thing. I really admire
Yeah.
you for that. I've gotten to know several swimmers at different levels, and there's something about the discipline, or maybe it's the long days going to natatoriums or something like that. But I was talking to he was a Olympic swimmer for Canada, and very similar thing. And I was thinking to myself, I'm a good floater. I can float well. It's that rigor of and moving forward that I don't really get right. But I'm really impressed with swimmers, and I applaud you on
Oh,
that. And then what you said there, that's striking. That what you. Well, first, let me address the men thing you said. It's interesting because we characterize men that go through this, and we almost laugh it off as, oh, they bought a sports car or something silly,
yeah.
and I don't think about that. And that's not what we're here to talk about today, but I'm glad you mentioned it. But with women, I haven't heard anybody say, I went through menopause and I found a better purpose, or I found a higher
Mm.
purpose that was interesting. And when you said that, that struck me. But maybe let's back up and say, what is it about the midlife there and perimenopause or menopause that is causing this challenge for
Sure.
women? I mean, I've read memory fog and some energy dips and things like that you've written about, but tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yes. So, and what the beginning of perimenopause can happen 7 to 10 years, up to like as long as 7 to 10 years ahead of menopause.
Yeah.
And the perimenopause experience, it can happen fewer years depending on every woman's journey is different. So I just want to clarify that everything I say is kind of just I would say aggregated information
Yeah.
just to know like your individual experience will be different compared to everyone else's, which which I feel compelled to say this, which means as women, we need to be more empathetic with one another too,
Mm.
and it's not even just like we want more support from men and allies and our male counterparts. We need to be counterparts and allies for each other,
Yeah.
because every individual woman's story is going to be different, and there's nothing we can do in terms of like a lot of these things that how we experience it physiologically. We can so I mean there's a lot we can do, but like your individual journey will be yours, and it's hard to like dial in on like everything you can do. You can't prevent it, right? So my um I would say that the key thing is perimenopause can begin as early as 35 depending on your like your own experience. And so for women who are perimenopausal that early, you can still become pregnant because you are still ovulating to the point where you can. So it's not like people are like, well, I got pregnant, in my late 30s. How can I be in perimenopause? Well, you can. So I
Yeah.
think that's what's so challenging about this topic is that there's so much information that we need to
Yeah.
unpack. But the key thing that happens in women's bodies and our brains is that estrogen starts declining and becoming like the rise and fall of estrogen becomes more severe and more erratic and unpredictable. Alongside that, and that controls like our emotions, our mood, um, our temperament, and so that's where kind of brain fog and anxiety, depression, and memory loss, things like that can be attributed to that. The rise and fall of progesterone then alongside that is something that it's a serotonin supporting hormone, and serotonin helps us be relaxed, be calm, helps us sleep,
Yeah.
and contributes to GABA production in our bodies. And so when our sleep is compromised, then our mood becomes even more unpredictable. But what's interesting is testosterone, the third hormone, which is actually most of our lives, we have more testosterone than the other two in our
Oh,
bodies as women, which we don't hear enough of. So, so the support and lifestyle changes, and also if you I guess, pursue hormone replacement therapy, which is very supportive of helping us through this process, then all three can be really wonderful in terms of us realizing we can preserve ourselves through this time more adequately if we understand that and find the right medical partner to kind of walk this journey with us. So that's what happens in the body. Um,
What
yeah,
is happening? What is happening externally
yeah,
that might make women feel like it's time to leave the workplace? I mean, I know that's a big leap, but I mean,
yeah.
I can you described what's happening internally, but something externally must be happening to make them feel like
Yeah.
this is not where they need to be.
Yep. Yeah. So what happens, there's lots of layers to this, but like
Yeah.
the primary symptoms will be, um, the hot flashes. Most women, will experience some degree of temperature fluctuation, even if it's not severe throughout the day or even the evening. And so we're just uncomfortable in our bodies at that point. And so, and they are unpredictable. So we like tend to like want, like, since we don't know and these start happening more often, we might retreat from high visibility opportunities, because we'll be sweating and then it just appears like we're nervous versus like there's something going on in our bodies. And then it can affect perception and executive presence. And so that's the common one. But the other thing that happens is and we're in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. And a statistic that I recently just became introduced to, was that the number one age range where women are more at risk of suicide is actually between the ages of 45 and 55,
Wow.
because two of the most common, under talked about, under discussed symptoms are anxiety and depression during this time of perimenopause. And what happens is if they go seek support, usually they're misdiagnosed, and then not always, and then
Yeah.
mistreated with antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds, and then that doesn't help. When
Right.
the reality is you could actually just replace estrogen and you are completely like back to normal
Wow.
usually. And so when you're having those waves of and that just creates uncertainty and lack of confidence, right? In terms of our mood and our temperament. But I would say the other one that I help my clients a lot with in terms of behavioral habits and systems is the cognitive changes that occur. So grasping for words when you're like, I know this person's name. Why can
Yeah.
I not think, like, I work with them? They're my manager. Like losing our words and feeling like we can't speak as intelligently as we once did because of the cognitive changes that estrogen impacts. Because perimenopause is an endocrine experience, which means it starts in the brain.
Mm.
Um, and we
Wow.
think it starts in the ovaries, but
Yeah.
this all starts in the brain. And our brain communicates to our ovaries. When that disconnect starts going haywire, then that impacts memory because glucose is being moved away from the prefrontal cortex. I could really dive into this science right now and geek
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like there's so much that like when they hear it explained to them, they're like, so there isn't anything wrong with me. Like there's not. It's just it is a normal experience for women. And when supported with, oh geez, sorry, I'm frozen
That's
here.
it. Yeah.
You can still hear me, right?
Yeah. We can still hear you. So.
Okay. And when supported behaviorally and also with lifestyle interventions, we can improve it up to 80%
Wow.
success rate.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hope there once you know what's going on with your bodies.
And when you said something early on that I want to address first, and then I want to ask you why women aren't getting that treatment as much. But the first thing you said was when we talk about you start withdrawing because there's certain situations you don't feel comfortable in, whether it's the memory or the hot flashes, et cetera. And I can just see that in the corporate world,
Mhm,
that would be viewed as weakness, and that's
mhm,
unfortunate, right? And so
mhm.
later on, can you tell us how organizational leaders need to embrace that or
Yes,
help fix that? But
yes.
secondly, why? So that's the first I heard that menopause starts in the brain and not
Yeah.
the ovaries, right? So how much of the population doesn't know that, and why don't women get that treatment? Why isn't it kind of obvious to them? To here's the next step you take.
Yeah. So sadly, physicians, even OBGYNs, actually only receive maybe 4 hours of menopause training in med school
Mm.
and even OBGYNs. So you can go on, there's a new certification and training for physicians and allied health professionals that you can go on and get menopause trained, but it's relatively new. And so we have not been prioritizing menopause health and women's health adequately in general for a long time. And so that's the first problem is physicians aren't equipped to actually have the right conversations with their patients. So you need to be really thoughtful around. You can even do this. You can even get this support through a telehealth medical professional. And so um, I would say that that's the first thing is like you go to your doctor and you say, and someone might say you're too young for it to
Yeah.
be in perimenopause, or it's just part of getting older. And the other thing that happens in perimenopause, because estrogen impacts our insulin and glucose levels, we start our body composition changes. And so we don't necessarily feel comfortable in our bodies unless we support our body and our health differently at this time in our lives. So so the medical support is lacking. There's more awareness increasing around it, but there's still less than 0.01% of doctors who actually are menopause trained
Right.
in North America. So that's the first thing. So when your doctors don't even know, it's really hard for you to know. So like more women, and I'm advocating for this, is be be your best advocate around this. Like learn as much as you can, and that's why I created the program that I did. But
Yeah.
and so yeah, so there's a little bit of gaslighting that goes on when they go
Yeah.
seek a
Yeah.
medical professionals, but I would say, the other thing too that I wanna, like, really be I wanna make it wasn't in the notes, but in 2001, there was a landmark study from the Women's Health Initiative that was, the data and the interpretation of the data was misstated by one of its primary investigators, stating that estrogen hormone replacement therapy, specifically estrogen, causes breast cancer. And so at that point, all doctors stopped prescribing it, even though they've been
Yep.
prescribing it for decades and everything was
Yep.
fine. That was a misinterpreted piece of data that has now been debunked by other medical professionals. So doctors just stopped having the conversation,
Yeah.
and but they're still behind on catching up with that. And what we saw in the rate of suicides at that point in 2001 in that demographic for women over 40, suicide rates went up drastically. It was like
Wow.
a hockey stick.
Yeah.
And so it is not only a leadership issue, but a mental health issue. So that is also something we're trying to overcome in the medical world. So
Yeah.
you can imagine how it might like in the workplace, it's like that same type of kind of conversation and resistance we might receive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's horrible. And it's I do some work with addiction, and
Mhm.
it's the same thing. Doctors, they focus on the body, not the brain, so to speak. And I don't mean the
Mhm.
brain, physical brain. I mean the mental brain. And
Yeah.
it's time to get more whole body, or I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, well, let's talk about U curve,
Mm.
and tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yes. So this occurs for both men and women, but it's specifically for women because with our decline, our fluctuation in estrogen occurring in perimenopause right up to menopause, um, we experience all that anxiety and depression, et cetera. But once we hit this point in midlife, those changes in the brain actually allow us to be more carefree, because estrogen is the nurturing hormone.
Mm.
And there's 3 different times in a woman's life where it changes. It's, puberty, pregnancy, and perimenopause. And we were, I think, designed by, I believe, by God in terms of that way to
Yeah.
support that phase of our life for what our role is as a woman.
Yeah.
And so, I can skip over the first 2 Ps if you wanna read about it. It's in, Dr. Mosconi's book called, The Menopause Brain. She does a great job of going into all of that. But for perimenopause, like, because that fluctuation evens out once we get to like this more of like the like 50 age range for women, it stabilizes more. And then, and it allows us to essentially, it's not that we're less nurturing, but we
Yeah.
care much less about what people think about us at that point.
Right.
And that's from a hormone perspective, but also from like a year, like an awareness of years lived. We're realizing, okay, we're in the second half, maybe like third quarter, like fourth quarter of our lives.
Yep.
And we have gone through potentially raising children, and they're adults now.
Yep.
We really align more with our values in terms of what we want to do, and we realize like I want to be more carefree and enjoy different hobbies, habits, etc. So there
Yeah.
is like from a physiological and also a cultural and a sociological perspective where
Yeah.
things just start to improve. And it is a beautiful time in life. And what's amazing is individuals are returning to the workforce now in this age range,
Okay.
because of
Yep.
a lot of reasons, like they have to because retirement has run out,
Yeah. Yeah.
or or they want more purpose again.
Yep.
Retirement is what isn't all that cracked up to be, um, and also organizations need more talent
Yeah.
too, and so there's there's an opportunity for us to live this whole nother level of purpose and meaning, and all of that together is like this increase of joy, because then not only that, we have all these skills that we've developed too that really are
Yeah.
able to be employed because we've been consistent with them. So if you're feeling low at this point right now, know that your up curve is coming.
Oh, that's awesome. And I love that. And you are, there's a, I don't know if you want to call it liberation, independence, something like that. When you stop caring less about what other people are thinking and you start doing things for you or
Yeah.
for other people, there is a kind of a, it's that weight gets off of you a little bit because now
Yeah.
you're focused on the right thing. So,
Yeah. And one other thing that I think is really important for this too is that we have more people around us who are passing away too. And
yeah.
and when we have that experience and we realize we are more immortal, we're
Yeah.
more immortal than we thought we were up into our 40s. Like we take our time much more seriously, and we only try, or like most people when they experience this lift, um have better boundaries and standards for their lives, which contributes to more joy as well. So there's that piece too. Like our parents are passing away, our friends are even passing away around us too, right? For different reasons.
Yep.
And we realize, wow, like this lifetime is short. I'm going to be happy and do what I want to do at this point, and do something good with my life with the life
Yep.
I have yet to live. So
Yeah.
there's, regardless of perimenopause, that is true for everyone,
It
right?
is. It is. I'm going to a funeral in a week's time of a best friend's parent, and
Oh,
I had a classmate that passed away not 2 weeks ago, and I heard this morning a coach of mine in high school passed away today or yesterday.
yeah.
And so
Wow.
you're right. There is this is happening, and now the gravity of what's ahead of us is more real, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. So the U curve. So what you're saying is in the U curve on that other side of that U is really really fun and can be very empowering, enriching, and that's what enlightened you. Is that were you on that part of the U?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Well, you said that you had a new mission. You realized a
Yeah.
new purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. This purpose to support women is
Okay.
also part of that. The other, I mean, and really just like my healthy habits and routines have just become more consistent, more important to me. And speaking to you, the habit expert, it is true. When you have that, when you show up for yourself, it is amazing the impact that it can have on every aspect of your life and relationships. And so I'm think I'm kind of on the like, the bottom right. I'm a little right here still. I kind of like go up a little bit and then I might come down,
Yeah.
but I'm still in perimenopause and still figuring out
Yeah.
all of that too. So
Well,
yeah.
you're doing great finding a way through it. I think it's wonderful that you are helping more women through this because just those numbers you talked about in the unfortunate thing in 2001 with that study. We need to get this word out. I mean, it needs to
Yeah.
be out. Thank you for doing that. So let's talk about how you help with that. You've got the Feminine Genius Method, and you may have other things, but I honed in on that one. So tell us about
Yeah.
how to help.
Yeah. So I started integrating this education, awareness, and behavioral, like cognitive behavioral types of interventions and coaching methods in my one-on-one work with women a few years ago, tying it directly back to their hormonal fluctuations. But it's work I've always done,
Yeah.
as a psychologist, but it's been amplified to like target, like, as an example, when we all have derailing behaviors. We all have triggers that
Yes.
we increase our awareness around and try to like master some agency around so that we can not have them impact our performance or our relationships in a detrimental way. So I've always done that work, connecting the psychology to your output and helping you develop um, support mechanisms. It could be like communication methods, it could be different ways you structure your meetings, it could be how you schedule your day. It is about how to have tough conversations in the correct way. All of
Yep.
those things are affected when our buttons are pushed.
Yes.
And those buttons become even more unpredictable when we have our hormones fluctuating. And
Mm.
so tying all of that together in my one-on-one work led me like had led my clients to have these unbelievable transformations, to the point where, one woman was able to like elevate her team to support her taking a sabbatical, so she could
Nice.
spend 3 months with her older parents and the last few months of her father's life.
Yeah.
But that was like a long journey with her. I worked with her for years. I still work with her, actually. But out of that, I created the Feminine Genius Method, which is a group coaching container right now, but I'm creating a self-paced course out of it as
Nice.
well, which will be more accessible to more people. And then, of course, there's the support in the group if you want to opt into that. But it's really around, because I'm not a medical physician, even though I would say I have more training than most doctors because of just my self-education.
Yeah.
And I attended the first menopause and women's health um, continuing medical education program at Harvard in March. They're going to do that every year, and so that's
Nice.
great. And so I was pleasantly surprised that I knew a lot that they taught just from like my own. I mean, I'm an avid learner. I'm voracious when it comes to like when I become obsessed with a topic. And so with that said, I put all of the the medical information in the program, but then I provide clear behavioral, simple tactics and tools to help support these fluctuations in terms of how it impacts your decision making, executive presence, you're having tough conversations, all of the same things I've been doing for years, but tying it back to our physiology. And so that's what I've been focused on in the last year and a half developing, and
Yeah.
just launched it, the first cohort in April.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I mean, granted, I'm not in your demographic, but I haven't heard of other programs like this. I'm sure there are, but I'm so happy they're out there, and we want to share it with everybody. So we'll put it in the chats and all that stuff. So what would somebody expect when they sign up for this group Genius Method?
Yeah.
What would they expect?
Yeah. So I will never be able to divorce my one-on-one work, even in a group program. So you get a one-on-one deep dive session with me right up front. And you then
Right.
also go through a couple of my assessments that I use for all my clients to help us really navigate what are your accelerators, where are you really performing, and then potential derailers, and then some perimenopausal symptom checklists. I do a sleep audit with everyone, all of
Ah,
this, understanding their behavior, their activity, and their health routines. And then I understand their business and what their goals are for their leadership role or their entrepreneurial role, depending on if you have your own business or internal at an organization. And we get all of that in the first session, and then you roll into the group, and we do. It's really about creating that community so that you don't feel alone,
yeah.
and be able to hear other people's stories, especially since we can't have a lot of these conversations. Well, we can, but a lot of people are not having these conversations in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I do is I coach my participants, one-on-one and group, on how to be advocates for themselves
Yep.
when they go see their doctors, how to find that support medically, but then also how to have the right conversations in the workplace, either with your manager or your team members. And I provide a whole communication system to do that.
Yep.
In the event that like you want to optimize your schedule in a way that can help support your energy flow throughout the day based
Yep.
on, we do an energy mapping session as well. So it's super um, systems oriented, and you get a lot of support and insight. And it's not, I designed it so that the micro lessons are, no more than 10 minutes a piece. And then we dive into group coaching, because then it doesn't feel overwhelming to the participant. So the
Yep.
transformation really on the other side is that they can preserve or even elevate their leadership to the next level. Because a lot of these things that I do in the behavioral coaching work that I do, most leaders aren't doing it at all, even before they get to this point in their career. So when
Right.
you amplify the skill set, it elevates your leadership to a level that like above their previous baseline even. So
Yeah.
it helps them be more competitive, and also preserves their confidence and their agency as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
And I've talked about at the top where I'm implementing AI in my courseware,
Yeah.
and just as an assistant, I know you're doing some of that as well. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about how AI assists.
Yes. So I have been, I've created this, I'm not probably the first person to say this, but like my AI dream team includes
Yeah.
Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Claude at this point, in terms of doing research around a topic, which is far beyond, I think a Google search can provide.
Yeah.
And then I leverage Claude in terms of really diving into I like creating specific projects for different things in Claude as it relates to helping me design a newsletter, how to have a tough conversation with someone,
Mm.
and really specific projects. So you can go in and ask the bot or the project or the AI, whatever it is. I know we both use Coach Fox, so
Yep. Yep.
I'm going to be leveraging her more pretty
Yep.
soon. And so you can actually like prepare more with someone in real time, and it's interactive,
Yep.
and you can brainstorm and strategize with these tools that you don't necessarily, you can actually ask a tough question that you want to ask your like manager or your direct report. This is where
Yep.
a lot of my clients use it, and it will walk you through how to have this conversation in a constructive way.
Yep.
And so it helps them feel confident to have the conversation,
Yeah.
and also collapses time, because then usually it doesn't require to have a lot of follow-ups if that first conversation is done well. So that's an
Yeah.
example of like from a leadership impact, but but also like creating routines and schedules
Yep.
is another huge resource, leveraging even ChatGPT, creating a custom GPT for whatever that is. And so I walk them through how I've done that for myself, and
Yep.
then they kind of play around with it and tell me like this worked, this didn't work, and we're just like refining that a little bit. But my sister and I are actually going to start a coaching business just on how to help leaders and entrepreneurs leverage AI
Oh,
specifically.
nice. Yeah.
Stay tuned for that. That's like
Yeah.
something exciting.
That's
Yeah.
it's what you just said there. It's interesting because I tell a lot of people whether I'm mentoring somebody that's in the workplace or outside the workplace, to play things forward, right? So
Mhm.
think about what's going to happen when you do certain things, and in business setting, it is a best time to think about it. And AI is a perfect companion to talk and make it ask you questions, not because you're necessarily learning from what it's doing, but
Yeah.
you're teaching yourself, right?
Mhm.
What if that interview does go that way, and that they ask that question, are you prepared? And
Yeah.
I think that when you think of what you just described there, is that scenario planning. I just think that's genius to do, and everybody can do it, right?
Yeah.
Because tools are there.
Well, and also, Michael, I know you know this about AI, but a lot of what prevents people maybe from using it as quickly as I believe they need to be is you can ask AI like, "How do I use you?" Like
Yeah.
you can use AI to like understand how to use AI. Like you
Yeah.
simply can show up and say, "I have this coming up. I don't know what to ask you. Here's the scenario. Like, can you be my, thought partner, strategy partner, and come up with some questions to ask me so I can be prepared.
Yeah.
It's like we don't like think about, and that is like the best way to engage with your AI.
I think so.
And so you're telling them like you don't have to know anything actually, but
Yeah.
and so you tell them, I don't know anything. Can you tell me how I need to use you? And
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. And I'm glad to hear you're putting it into your method as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a great companion to carry on after you have a conversation too, just to
Yes. Yes.
not only replay but prepare for the next, and schedules and routines. That's right up my wheelhouse. So
Yeah.
yes, I love AI for that. Just ask it if you're going to start a new habit, ask it, and it's going to
Yeah.
help you along. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
Jennifer, that is so good. We mentioned it earlier, and I just want to get back to it. So, what should company leaders, organizations, CHROs,
Yeah.
people that are in a position to actually help their employees, their women, um, get through this, but get through it with grace and hopefully even super achievers after that, like you described in the U curve. What
Yeah.
should they be doing? What should these leaders be doing?
Well, the first thing is to understand the cost to the organizations if they do nothing. And I'll just kind of drop another amazing statistic on you here, but in 2023, the Mayo Clinic did an unbelievable longitudinal research study of the U.S. workforce and the economic impact of perimenopause and menopausal symptoms. And we lose in this country alone $1.8 million in lost work time annually. And
Yeah,
then and when you factor in medical expenses, the total cost
yeah,
rises to $26.6 billion per year.
that's incredible.
So it's an impact on the individual organization, but it's an impact on our entire ecosystem of support for this, for our thriving economy, which obviously when we take care of that, then a lot of other things improve in our world. So that's the first thing, is to recognize the cost to your organization if you do nothing.
Yeah,
And ultimately, um, one of the things too that I recognized early on, we have, the 33% of women leaving the workforce at this prime time in
yep,
our careers. And it's not the only contributing factor to the gap, right? The gender gap in leadership levels. It's a piece of it, I believe, though, because if we don't have those women staying in these roles to rise to the opportunities,
yep,
um, you know, then the gap remains as big as it is.
yep,
And so there's that piece of it too. I mean, the more points of view we have at a decision-making table and in a strategy conversation impacts not only the performance of the organization, but the psychological safety of the organization, which we
yes,
know from the Google study, the, Aristotle study, that psychological safety is the number one success factor for high performing teams and organizations. And when
yep,
we have varying viewpoints where people can feel heard and feel seen, then that improves the organization. And that requires gender differences. That requires diversity across the board. And
yeah,
so, it's a really like tough time right now to even have that conversation, but
yep,
like I stand by it. And I think, what, leaders, if they care about um, if they're aligned to like high integrity values, then this will matter to them. But
yep,
like if you think about it, physicians don't even know what to do or how to talk about
yeah,
it. Like our
exactly, yeah,
leaders are like also like, I don't know how to like tell me what to do. So when I talk to my male clients, which actually they still make up 50% of my client base because
yep,
they're like the majority of them are in leadership roles. And so when I share this information with them about one of their team members or whatnot, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, why isn't anyone talking about this? Like, my wife, like, went through this and she didn't even talk to me about it," you
yeah,
know? And so, like, one client said, "For me to, like, learn all of this in my work environment actually improved my marriage." Like, it was it gave me goosebumps just now again thinking about it
yeah,
because
yeah,
it brought him to tears that, like, women suffer silently, and it could even be your wife.
yeah,
And um, so I guess, like, the only thing, like, when you hear someone wanting to talk about it, like, embrace the conversation, whether you're a man or a woman,
yeah,
and understand it more because it is something that, we can actually, when we have more of a conversation and understand what is going on for our women, leaders, then everyone benefits from it. Everyone. So
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
just like having like the understanding that A, it impacts your bottom line, but B, you could potentially be saving someone's life too.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I was thinking while you were saying that, as much as we criticize Gen Z for having all these demands as they come into the workplace, good on them, because our generation, at least I can speak for me. I think you're younger than me, but Gen X, we don't know how to ask for help, and
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
the age group that's going through this right now. So I would
Yeah.
encourage everybody to figure out, ask for help. If you don't feel comfortable doing it with your leadership of your team, get it externally, like through you and your
Yeah.
programs, because I
Yeah.
think it's important that you do, because those numbers are staggering. Not the cost of the business, not to mention just the depletion in the workforce of really talented people is kind of ridiculous that we're not talking about it enough, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jennifer, we come to our time. I think we need to do another session. So we'll look out in the future and do that. Maybe we'll even ask Jody to join us, and we can talk about AI on
Oh,
this stuff.
yeah, that would be dynamic. That would be
Yes.
amazing.
So thank you so much. If somebody wants to find you, what's the best way to find you? I know I follow you on LinkedIn. By the way, I love the Rory Masters thing you
Yes.
did, blog or whatever it was. That was very insightful. But how best to find you for people?
Well, on that note, I should say the thing that's helping me get my joy, the lift in my U curve these days, is I like becoming obsessed with golf more now
Okay.
that I still swim a lot, but I golfed growing up, but gave it up to swim competitively in college. But I will tell you, like, that's my goal, is to become an amateur golfer. And so I'm trying to like create more habits. So that's what you'll see, a lot more golf out there as well. But
Good.
you can just reach out to me, at jennifer@jenniferchurchill.com. If anyone would just like to, connect with me, but also like on LinkedIn, of course, but I share lots of different types of content on my Instagram as well.
Okay.
So you can follow along. But I also like relaunched my YouTube channel that's focused on perimenopause and midlife. And I'm creating, and that will a 20 episode series on individual symptoms, awareness, and what you can do about it. Right there
Perfect.
on my YouTube playlist as well.
All right. So we'll
So,
we'll we'll get all those links. Hopefully, I'll get all those links and put them in the chat session so people can find them there. But do look
okay.
up, especially if you're a woman going through this and you don't know where to turn. Find Jennifer. And if you're a husband or a spouse or something, it sounds like you could also take some
Yes.
time and learn, right? And the
Yes.
YouTube channel may be the best way to do that. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jennifer. Great information, very important topic. We really appreciate you being on, and thank you.